Hi, Happy New Year. Welcome to my latest video. It's going to be a series of time lapses on landscapes I drew for my Patreon in 2023 and that I eventually printed as a calendar that I sold in December. It was a limited calendar. I don't have it available right now, but I thought it would be fun for everybody to see the illustrations because I'm very proud of them and they turned out really cool. And they're based on my travels around Puerto Rico when there was a pandemic lockdown. The only way to get out of the house was to pick a destination that was kind of abandoned or empty or not popular and just head over. And I think that opened up my mind to more exploring around my environment and my home. And I made these illustrations to celebrate that. So what you're seeing right now is La Central Azucarera Colosos, which we stumbled upon, me and my pandemic pod, as we were going to Aguala, and we stopped and took pictures of this particular view. It seemed to be really abandoned, and I guess we could have walked around, but you can sort of follow your gut feeling on whether you think that the place is going to be full of security guards or monitored, or is it really abandoned, or is it too abandoned that people might be squatting there. So I just took pictures of La Central. I would have loved to walk around. There's a lot of abandoned sugar factories around the island, but this one just had really cool like this industrial facade, and I wanted to illustrate that. We were actually going to Aguada just to buy whoopie cakes and cream puffs from this pastry shop that had just opened during the pandemic. And I think before the lockdown, the attitude was like, oh, what? You're going to drive 2 hours just for whoopie pies and puff pastries? And now it's like, yeah, I'm going to drive 2 hours to get whoopie cakes and puffs. Because I'm sick of the city center. And during the pandemic, that's all you could do. You could just travel around with your pandemic pod and get some fresh air and touch grass far away from people. So I saw so many cool things during these 3 years of the pandemic, even though, of course, it's horrible and a lot of people died and we're still going through it. But I managed to carve out that little positivity, of course, having the privilege of a car and everything else. But yes. So now we are in Bayamón, and again, I was walking around with my friends, just seeing what Bayamón's center had to offer, and we stumbled upon this little taxi station. There's not a lot of taxis around the city centers and the municipalities because they're mostly taken up by tourism and all the tourist spots, but I thought this was so handy and convenient, and I don't know why every municipality doesn't have it because it seemed to be working still. It was very clean. The radio was on when I saw it first, and it was so cute because it had these little squares that were color blocked and you can actually turn them, and it was like a little sculpture art piece while you were waiting for your taxi. And a lot of old people still use taxis to get around, and it was nice to have a place where you could sit and get a shade until the taxis arrived. So it was really cool, and I really liked the design. Now we're in La Iglesia. Oh man, I should have checked these. Hold up. It's the Concatedral Dulce Nombre de Jesús in Humacao, and it's the church right at the plaza at the middle of the city center in the municipality. And I thought it looked so nice. It's painted in neutral colors or mostly off-whites, and it looked like a giant cake. And I really liked it. You might have noticed that the Bayamón illustration and this illustration, the finished pieces are very different, and it's because I wasn't super sure about the composition, and after I had a few months of looking at it and thinking about it, I switched some of the colors in the Bayamón one, and in this one I altered the landscape because I thought the church has so many details. And I wanted to show them off, but if I included the palm trees and the rest of the plaza, it would just get lost a little bit in the size. So eventually I just made it bigger, and so that the church could actually show itself off a little bit better. And you're thinking like, oh, so even though you're an atheist, you like, yes, I like looking at churches, even though I am not a believer, because they are, I think, important architecture landmarks, especially when you start getting into the history. And I really loved that last year I learned a lot about the Manatee church in the municipality, because the plazas were actually, as it turns out, places where the indigenous population was abused. There's a lot of people buried underground of the churches, and if you go to the Cajay church, you can see replicas of the bodies they found around the church when they were modernizing the plaza. So they're fascinating stuff, and they harbor a lot of history. So, and now I decided to break up I know I said landscapes, but I had to stop for food as well. So these are things I also ate during my travels. Some I remember where, some I didn't, but I know that at one point we were kind of in the east side of the island, say southeast side of the island, and we stopped at this food truck, and they had stuffed avocados with local lobster, and we had to stop, and it was like a proper jartera. So every so often you're gonna see a food illustration, because I wanted to break up all of the landscapes, because I don't usually do landscapes. This was practice for me. So this is in Luquillo. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm checking out the places because I forget. So this is in Luquillo, and Luquillo is a pretty popular tourist beach, even though maybe the water can be a little bit dangerous sometimes of the year, and there's a lot of literal red flags in the shore. So if you're visiting, or if you are not accustomed to beach culture, please always check the shore to see if there are red flags, so that you don't get pulled by the currents and drown. But this stretch of beach also has a lot of the tide rises very high, so it creates these pockets of seawater a little bit further inland, and you can see people use floaties and just hang in these little I guess saltwater ponds that are created because of the tide, and they're really cool. So it's very relaxing. So these were the summer months. I was already, by the time I was doing the Patreon, I was halfway through. I knew I was gonna do a calendar, so I wanted all the summer months to be beach landscapes. And this one we found a little bit by accident. We were going to Guanica to see the lighthouse, but sadly it was destroyed in the 2020 earthquake, so we were seeing the ruins of it. And then we went to El Fuerte Capron, which is on top of a huge hill / mountain, and the hike was 1 hour to get there, and you can see the whole of Guanica from up there, and it was great. But afterwards we went to this beach that's inside the reserve, and it was very beautiful, and it's in this little like bahia, bay, that is completely surrounded by these tall mountains full of like stones and mountainside and vegetation. It was so relaxing, and it was a really nice clean beach. So now we're here in one of my favorite spots that we discovered during these pandemic travels, and it's Isla de Cabra in Toa Baja, and I love this park. It's a reserve. It's a historical reserve. It's a natural reserve, but it's open to the public, and it's usually free, or you can pay parking for like $3, which is more than worth it. There's also a police training ground for whatever reason, and there's a fishing center. So you get a lot of fishermen, you get a lot of people in jet skis because the water is so flat. You get beautiful views of old San Juan from the east coast, I want to say. And you also get a lot of hiking and some ruins, because it also used to be a place where they helped lepers. There was a leper colony way back when. So now we're back to food. And I went to the flower festival in Ay Bonito, and it was really hot, so we bought piraguas and these things that are called tetitas, or titties, I guess, in English. And it's just little bits of ice cream in the shape of boobs. And it was delicious. And we talked to an old lady while we were eating our piraguas, and it was great. And it was such a nice flower festival. Totally recommend. And now this house was a random thing. I went to Jauco to see this big tree that some old ladies had sit down and knitted this beautiful piece of knitted art, and they just covered the whole tree in knitted art, and they made a swing and they painted the floor around the tree because it's a little plaza, and it was great. But I was walking around, we saw this house, and it was actually for sale, and it's called the Casa Rodríguez, and it belonged to this wealthy family in Jauco. And there was like a bunch of wealthy families in Jauco I ended up researching. But this one stuck out. I think it was built in 1952, and it's Spanish colonial, and it's huge, and it covers a whole corner. And if you know, corner houses get more land, I think. And I didn't even check how much it was, but it was great. So I took this view of it. It's not actually the front view, it's the side view, but I thought it made a really nice juxtaposition. And if you've been paying attention to the compositions, I actually like breaking up the structure with a tree or like this light post in the front, because I think it makes it feel very realistic and makes it look more current, because you can't deny these things in our landscape. So I thought it was a really nice way to break up the structure with this light post. And when I was researching the house, the light post is actually a new addition, which is probably why it's leaning, but I just thought it was great. So this is in Arecibo. This is actually in Arecibo, and it's a Templar building. Apparently, there's a lot of Templars in Puerto Rico, and this is the Respetable Logia Panamá número 2. And it's in Arecibo, and it's just there. And it has a beautiful front plaza with a fountain, and it's kind of abandoned. But I couldn't go inside, of course. I mean, it's very secure, but it just struck me as like this really imposing building. And in the background, you can see the beach and the rest of the coast. And then in front, you have this huge place where you could probably have like these really nice parties with the open building, and then just hang around the fountain with all of these benches. And it's kind of nestled in between the plaza in front of the Tanama, is nestled in these buildings as well. And overall, I really like the architecture in Arecibo, and it was a really nice city center, and it's made for walking. You just have to park wherever, and you can just walk around Arecibo, and you have a little shopping district, and you have your restaurant district, and you get all of these brilliant buildings all around, but it's all walking distance, and it's great. So we're almost done. This is November in my calendar, and it is the Bosque Cambalache, which is between Arecibo and Barceloneta. And it has really nice hike lanes. They're in a little bit of a disrepair, but there's a lot of people who use them for mountain biking. But we walked around for a while, and we saw a lot of nature. And this was early on during the pandemic, so there were a lot of people bird watching or biking, and families keeping to themselves. But there were actually people also picnicking outside the main entrance of the forest. There were people just outside in their blankets, and it was the first time it kind of struck us that these spaces are very much used and needed. And there's this thing of saying like, oh well, people don't use them, people don't go outside, but in all of my travels I've seen that people actually use them, and more mayors should make a point of keeping them up to date so that we can continue to use them, because green spaces are so important. So this is the end. I'm leaving, but this is our typical Christmas dinner. We have arroz con gandules, we have pernil, we have amarillito, we have yuca escabeche, we have potato salad, we have codito salad. Follow me in all of these socials. See you in the next video.